Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 12, Week 1 Power Rankings, Week 1 in the book, and it's time to see if any of us on this channel are still qualified to give you any advice at all. I am IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. As always, I am joined by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
And we're going to do things probably a little bit differently overall here. We have two separate conferences to go over. And before we even get into that too, we do actually have a couple of post-draft but pre-week 1 trades that we want to go over real quickly here. And as we can see, they are both from the Paldea conference. So this is your stomping ground here, Steve. First off, the Close Combat Club, before anything else happened, traded out the Hawlucha that they picked with the Mr. Irrelevant pick at the end of the draft to bring in the Dunsparce, the very versatile, very surprisingly bulky, normal type. What does this do for their team?
The Dunsparce definitely brings a bulk. Trades kind of the power and speed of Hawlucha, as well as like the hazard removal. I personally think Hawlucha's a better mon, but the Close Combat Club really liked the Dunsparce and decided to pick it up. So hopefully that works out for them.
I'm not sure either of them fit too well in the team. I'm not sure Dunsparce the answer. But again, if it is a favored mon, especially with a new generation, more power to you to try to get something you're maybe a little bit more comfortable with if you're freaking out there for that final pick. We actually had two transactions then too from Quiet Majesty before their first match in our Serena and Miss Magia's out the Scyther Magneton. What's up with this, Steve?
Yeah, looking at the team, I know as you'll talk about and mention, this is my week 1 opponent, and I had noticed, the team had a little bit of a ground weakness. So seeing the Magneton go away and the Serena come in, really did not make that any better. And then Scyther for Miss Magius, I guess those aren't the exact, but anyways, they're patching up, switching up their last couple picks. Trying to keep some hazard removal, getting rapid spin over defog is pretty nice, getting a better special attacker, keeping that 105 speed tier, and honestly keeping the other one very similar to around 70. So all in all, just swapping it out to probably overall better mons. I like Scyther for the ability to run Eviolite, but you kind of would need to run Boots on this team as it would be the only hazard removal. So Serena definitely makes a lot more sense as a hazard remover. And then Miss Magius is probably just better than Magneton. I guess trapping could be fun with Magneton, but it would have not the best time removing steel types. So overall, I think these are upgrades to the team.
I think that's overall fair, yes. I think that maybe the Scyther and Magneton are better individual mons, but in terms of team composition, I think I do agree that these do help out Quiet Majesty go in the right direction there. So that's it for trades, and let us head into the recaps. On the Paldean side, it's a classic showdown between our boy SteveChuck and his old rival in his first match in the main league, Quiet Majesty. And for maybe the first time in anything, Greg gets the W against SteveChuck 2-0 over the Wobbuffets. Garchomp and Orthworm trading some hazards. A cute Metal Burst brings Chomp low, but Fire Blast takes care of that. And then Toxapex starts going in a bit. Offensively, it's doing more damage than any of us thought, including a solid defense drop on Roaring Moon before dropping the Gengar. And then the reverse sweep. Dragonite is in with 2 Dragon Dances, and it's starting to look scary. Ms. Magi is down. Pex at least gets a Toxcough before it goes down as Pothra just to protect, and it goes down. Then Chomp goes down too. A 4-for-1 trade before D-Knight finally succumbs to poison, which surely means it was a great time after that, right? Blind double Chi-Yu and Scizor favors the fish. Even worse when Chi-Yu flame charges up on Roaring Moon before evening up the score. Sandy Shocks is in. Is it Scarf? No, down to Overheat, and even Terra Steel Bullet Punch isn't enough to bring it down. The Goldfish takes down the last 3 by itself. 2-0, Quiet Majesty. Next up, the Newport Noctiles facing off against the Wooper Troopers. Snag a 3-0 victory to start off 1-0 again. Some early trading, Iron Jugulus with the manual electric terrain and a couple hurricane misses, but T-Tar Terra Fairy takes care of that. But surprise, Iron Thorns, the other Tyranitar, comes in, matches the Terra, also goes Fairy, and D dances up to match. They essentially take care of each other thanks to another big crit there. And then moving on is a lot more trading. Glamora KOs Great Tusk, Azu KOs Glamora, Arcanine KOs Azu, and it's suddenly a close 3v3. What happened? Hydreigon takes care of Annihilate very well with Nasty Plot and a Chople Berry. And then Fortress with Gyro Ball cleans up the last two by itself. It wasn't pretty with a little bit of help there, but it's 3-0 win for the Noctowls. Let's talk about the Boulder Boulders. They secured a clean 5-0 win over the Zanesville Zigzagoons. Early rocks are traded, then Sasbo shows us how to sit with a Ting Lu. Stacks up some spikes too, and whirlwinding out everything. Magnuson eventually shows up to KO Pelipper, and Rotom takes care of a lame duck Talonflame. But then the real star shows up. Calm Mind Hatterene sits in front of everyone. Terra Grass to KO Rotom, and that's about it from there. Hatterene with 5 KOs to lead Paldea in the 5-0. And finally, the Close Combat Club and Kanto Kingler squared off in a close match, which is good enough to earn them the match of the week, hosted by our own Michael of the Route 1 Burbs. So go check that one out when you get the chance. And with that, with the Akron Agrons also taking a first week bye, that is what happened in the Paldean Conference in week 1. In the Johto Conference, we're starting off with the Bouffalant and the Psyducks, and the one sure thing in this league is no more, with the Bouffalant falling in week 1 in a close, heartbreaking 1-0 loss. Rocks traded early, but they apparently didn't matter. Gyarados chipped early by Goldango, Scizor chipped early by Knockoff, and Excalibur with the Icicle Crash miss on Talonflame. Tragedy. Ozzy with Trailblaze to chunk the Quagsire low, and then KO the Gyarados in exchange for most of its health. Talonflame back in, tanks a Glaive Rush from Excalibur, but stopped the setup, then sacked its life for Quagsire's 5v4. Toxtricity chipped by Scizor, but that's down to 5v3. Skeledirge outtrades the Gastrodon thanks to a Water Terra, but at 39%, it too goes down to a Revenge Boom Burst 4v2. But there's the Iron Valiant with the speed boost from Booster Energy. Toxtricity's down, the Scarf wasn't enough. Wo-Chen's Terra's Fairy stalls out for a bit and refuses to KO the Iron Valiant, going down first to make sure Azu gets the KO, so it's in against Excalibur in the 2-on-1. With the Scarf Goldango in the back, Excalibur has to set up lest it go down to the Make It Rain in the back, so it does, but Play Rough misses the 10% chance to win. A couple EQs finish off Azu and Goldango, and the Psyducks sneak away with the close 1-0 victory. Next cast member up, it's the Route 1 Burbs taking on the Lorraine Lairon, where they also lost a 3-0 victory for the Lairon in the second major upset in the Johto Conference. It started off rough for the Burbs, proccing to toxic debris and getting Slowbro poisoned, but they did stop the Dondozo setup, threatening Specs Draco, which misses on the incoming Crocodile, another 90% miss, and then he stays in, gets outsped by Crook, and goes down to the Crook Outrage, a crazy early game. It'll take most of Halucha's health to answer back with the Revenge KO, and then Ting Lu can't make more than 50% stick onto the Iron Hands, who KOs right back too. Glimmora gets a couple more hazards before it goes down. The Burb side is littered with stuff, and that means Chen Pao takes almost half from them, tanks a Dark Pulse poorly, and then does about nothing to Dondozo before going down itself. Halucha finally removes all the hazards and goes down, but it looks like it's just too late. Iron Moth does destroy Dondozo with a Terra Grass, but with Slowbro on a timer, Quaquaval goes Terra Water and sets up, taking down Slowbro and Iron Moth to secure the W for the Lairon 3-0. The last of the top seeds is Chad Seattle Steamrollers going against the Adams Pidgey Emporium, and finally giving us some predictability with a 5-0 win. Didn't start that easily with a swap into Rotom Heat turn 1, giving Moldbreaker Haxorus the easy KO with Earthquake, and Adam the 6-5 lead. From then on, though, it was all Steamrollers. Reflect Grimmsnarl, then Spirit Break to drop Haxorus low, then a Light Screen on Volcarona. Defiant Annihilate did take advantage of Parting Shot, very nice, but returned in kind by a Terra Normal Gengar to 2-hit KO the Annihilate right back. Very fancy. Nasty Plot helps Gengar put in some work from there, KOing Toxpex with T-Bolt and forcing out the Haxorus. Chad with some nice maneuvering around that, ending up with Banded Cinderace 2-hit KOing Screamtail, even with Reflect Up after the first. He can set up his own light screen for the Cinder, who's tries taking down Volcarona, but a Terra Rock, very nice. Still, Dragonite can tank the hit, get it low, and finish with extreme speed. From here, it's about over. Great pivoting using Iron Tread's resistances help Gengar pick up the KO on Corviknight, and itself the KO on Haxorus, leading them to the W. And finally, Mr. Comeback season himself with the 6-0 win over the mighty Miltanks. Turn 1, Garganacci switches in and doesn't swap out after that. Terra Fairy with Iron Defense, Body Press, Salt Cure, and Recover, and yeah, Amoonguss gave it a bit of trouble, and Terra Electric Kilowattrel got it down to 7%, potentially if the right move had been clicked, maybe more. But it's a 6-0 with all 6 going to overall KO leader Garganacci, so all is good for the Incineroar. And that, in addition to the Music City Mudkips rocking the bye week, is what happened in the Johto Conference. And with that, we get to the power rankings themselves. We went over the Paldean Conference first. It's only fitting that we do the power rankings for them first as well. It's maybe a different list than what we expected from the beginning of the week. It is number 1 Newport Noctels, pretty much where they belong there, right? And then Quiet Majesty sneaking up all the way to 2, Boulder Boulders at 3, and Close Combat Club rounding out our top 4 for right now. But we have to start off, of course, Steve, with the Newport Noctels up at the top there. A 3-0 victory, and mostly clean, but I think there are some potential concerns here, actually.
Yeah, in general, they had a strong performance, able to handle the Wooper Troopers very well, avoiding hazard setup and being able to trade pretty effectively into an endgame situation that they controlled. There definitely was some RNG going their way throughout the battle, but overall, based on their historical performance and handling this opponent fairly well in this first battle, we figured they are deserving of that number 1 spot.
Probably the cleanest of an opponent that we thought was maybe more close to their caliber there too, and definitely agree the end game was really well done overall. They're getting the Hydreigon in perfectly, using the Chop Berry not for its originally intended purpose, but still making full use of it. Really well done overall from Jimmy. I'm not sure how much more praise we can heap onto him because he is just maybe the most consistent coach at this point, with maybe one exception that we'll get to in the Johto rankings here too. We talked a little bit about who to put between 2 and 3 here. We did decide on the Quiet Majesty here too. I know you probably don't want to talk about it as much here, but Quiet Majesty, Greg, actually getting the better of you in this match here too. I think we can both agree it wasn't particularly pretty from either side, but Quiet Majesty with, I think, some pretty good play overall from the Tuck Specs and from being able to use the Chi-Yu pretty well there to get the victory. Tell us a little bit more about why we wanted to put the Majesty at 2 and about their gameplay overall.
Yeah, the Majesty in this battle played a somewhat unusual offensive-leaning Toxapex that was really giving their opponent, me, some trouble. That led to a kind of dominant early game for them where they really started snowballing a little bit with a lot of damage accumulating. But, once Dragonite came out, that stopped. But they were able to, at the end, use Chi-Yu and clean up with a sweeper set with Flame Charge. Worked out very well for them. Was able to, pick up a 2-0 victory that, as soon as they got that Flame Charge off, was really not in question outside of defensive Terra types. So, overall, well-played match, prepared for the team, and handled it well.
And I think we could agree this was still a very strong quality opponent that they faced. So despite, I think there were still a couple of missteps in there, I think definitely could have played the D-Knight a little bit better. Yes, good job getting the Toxic off on it, and I think waiting that out was definitely the correct play. But I think there was some smart switching that could have been done there instead to help that out at least a little bit. For example, being able to go into the Garchomp a little bit earlier to make sure that the Rough Skin recoil on the Dragon Claw could have taken full effect would have been really nice to see. Maybe abusing the Protect on Espathra a little bit more. Steal something like Espathra Protect into the Garchomp, sack that, back to Espathra, get another Protect. But otherwise, again, a couple of those sets, the Toxapex and Chi-Yu sets in particular, are really putting in a lot of work there. And against a quality opponent means that they do end up at number 2 there. Boulder Boulders, though, maybe overall, maybe the cleanest game, actually, in the conference, so really well done by them, getting the 5-0 over the Zigzagoons. I think there were 2 mons that we really saw used well. Ting-Lu, this is how you use Ting-Lu, everyone. You just kind of sit there and you whirlwind things around and wowed it, put in a lot of work, and the Calm Mind Hatterene, Steve, that's the kill leader after 1 week, is that hat.
Yeah, the Hatterene was fantastically played here. Once it got in, that was game. Watching the replay and knowing how things, you see that switch in, it's like, oh, well, that's it. Terra Grass to get extra power on the Giga Drain, set up a couple Calm Minds, and nothing on the Zigzagoon teams could stand up to it. There were a couple of nice aspects here. For example, the Cloak to prevent the Salt Cure damage was pretty big in staying healthy. And outside of that, just, Giga Drain up and do work.
That's the kind of synergy I like to see with the Terra too. Not only defensively to an extent against something like the Rotom, and offensively to an extent for the Rotom, but also to power up the Giga Drain, like you said. That's really cool synergy. Get extra a little bit of power on something that was already there and synergized well. You think sometimes about Draining Kiss for the recovery move of choice for Hadrian, but why not Giga Drain if you just power it up a little bit there? Again, real clean there too. And then finally, we didn't go over it too much because it is the match of the week, but the Close Combat Club down there at number 4. Honestly, kind of expected a better showing there overall, Steve. Again, we don't, without going too much in the match, we want to encourage people to go out and check out the rest of our channel, what it has to offer. But talk to us a bit about how the Close Combat Club ended up down at number 4 and maybe almost slipped out of that spot even.
Yeah, unlike some of the other matches where there were dominant wins over lower ranked opponents or close upsets over higher ranked opponents, this is, should have been a pretty big win for the club, and they narrowly escaped with a 1-0. It did seem like they were in control for most of the battle, but the end result was a little scary for them. A couple plays that could be better optimized. Things like the Palafin not really being involved, even in baby form, until like turn 40 or so. Lots of things that could be done better and nearly cost them the game. But in the end, they did get a win. They were basically in control the entire game, keeping in it. So with that in mind, we thought we'd definitely include them here. They did more than any of the losing teams.
And definitely the way that John approaches seasons, it often takes a week or two, I think, to get into his groove or his rhythm and find those things that work. I don't think we can fault him for starting off with win, even if things didn't quite work out the way that he wanted them to. Knowing him as a coach, he's going to bring it together in the next week or two, and hopefully get the ball rolling from there. So that's going to clear out our top 4 here for Paldea. And remember, only those top 4 teams and anyone tied with the 4th team are going to be the ones to make playoffs. So this is going to be a fun watch throughout the season. However, we also have a whole other conference to go through, including the potentially top 2 seeds. Both lost. So let's see if maybe either of us could have made the list. But we did not. We, in fact, went with, of course, the Steamrollers up there at number 1, and the Incineroar at number 2, fresh off their 6-0 victory. The Psyducks with their big upset win, 1-0, and the Lorraine Lairon with their upset win down at number 4. I know how much you love talking about Chad on the power rankings. You put him up basically number 1 every single time here, Steve. This was a pretty nice win, aside from a misstep turn 1. Really nothing else to complain about from Chad Steamrollers.
Yeah. The biggest thing, I think, is a little bit of either a misprediction or a forgetting how Mold Breaker works, but losing Rotom Heat first turn to Mold Breaker Earthquake. Outside of that, the misplays are done for the Steamrollers. They, from that point on, dominated the game, making smart switches as needed and decimating the opponent's team. It worked out really well for them. They had counterplays to key threats, specifically the Annihilate with the Terra Normal Gengar, fantastic play there, and tore through the rest of the team. There's not too much to say. It was well executed, good pivots, good offense. Handled it well after getting, that turn 1 issue out of the way.
This really was well played by his opponent there. The Annihilate swapping in on Parting Shot, overcome by, which, like you said, the Terra Normal Gengar. Really, really nicely done there, too. Really just great maneuvering from Chad to get around things like the last chance Hail Mary, the Terra Rock Volcarona, almost getting something done there. Sacrificed the Scream Tail to get a Reflect Up, and even then Chad played around it perfectly to get into position where he could have taken it down there relatively easily, unscathed, without losing any more mons after turn 1. Just really good, consistent play from Chad. Our next 2, I think we're very close in our eyes. We debated this a lot beforehand, and we actually kind of have the positions swapped from the other conference, but I think I feel pretty good about where they're at right now. The Incineroar at 2, not too much to talk about here, but we'll go over it first here, Steve. It was a 6-0 win. Matt swaps out into Garganacci on turn 1, and it doesn't switch out after that. It's the 6 KO leader, and it executed perfectly.
Yeah, Matt came in here with a Garganacci and wanted to show how good it was, and he showed it. For an unprepared team, it just kind of tore through the entire team. From my point of view, that seemed like a fantastic thing, and what we would expect one of the better ranked players to do against one of the lower ranked players. Of course, we didn't get to see too much else of Matt's gameplay, which kind of makes the question mark. And this is the most volatile 2 you'll probably ever see. After week 2, Matt could completely drop off. Matt could jump up to 1. It really depends how these future weeks and matchups go for him. But based on what we've seen this week, things are looking good for the comeback season.
And pairing that up with, again, about the exact opposite there at number 3, the Psyducks. I don't want to talk too much about it, but the Psyducks did earn themselves a W there, the 10% W potentially, but a W nonetheless, and honestly played very well all the way throughout, too. Some of those plays, especially setting up for the end, getting things in range, in particular for a couple of Mons. The Iron Valiants at the end, I thought, put in a lot of work, getting a little bit of chip. The boots on everything looked like good prep. I think that's a big thing that we have to give credit for, is really good prep all the way around from Zach and the Psyducks. But what do you think about them at number 3?
So yeah, Zach did play very well. We decided to put him here at number 3 for a couple of reasons. A big one you mentioned here is that play rough miss. A 10% chance he wins this game, and it's a big win for him because of it. But there was that 90% chance that he lost this game, and that's just part of Pokemon. So it happened, and it's okay. But that's kind of why we put him here. Nate, you had mentioned the comparison between the 2 conferences, and how in both conferences we have a big upset at 2 or 3, and then a team that swept a lower ranked team, or nearly swept a lower ranked team. I just kind of want to highlight the differences here. In the Paldea conference, the Quiet Majesty took the 2-0 over the Wobbuffets without kind of the RNG 10% chance to win at the end, kind of giving them a little bit of a stronger case, although historically speaking, the Wobbuffets are a little bit weaker of opponent than the Bouffalant, but still, there's a little bit more there. And we mentioned, with the Psyducks, that chance. And then comparing the other 2, the Incineroar had a dominant 6-0 win where, they turn 1 switched into Garganackle and won with it. Whereas the Boldors did lose a Pokemon and, took a little bit to get into their situation. Both were going up against bottom-ranked teams in their conferences, but in the end result, we felt that extra Mon left for the Incineroar and the RNG and slight differences there were enough to kind of rank them differently in each conference. But these 2s and 3s are very close in our eyes right now.
Definitely agree. I think it wouldn't be terribly wrong if we had swapped either of those 2s, 3s in either conference, but this is where we're settled at for now. And also pretty settled on the number 4 team, Lorraine Lairon. It took a lot longer for them to make an appearance on our power rankings last time, but here they are here now, beating up the Route 1 Burbs. And honestly, I think we talked about this a little bit too beforehand. This may have been one of the sloppiest matches all the way around from both sides. There wasn't too much that the Lairon did well, so much as I think the Burbs played a very sloppy game uncharacteristically here.
Yeah, not to distract from the Lairon, but they definitely had their moments. They prioritized getting up hazards, which really did well for them. They took advantage of the opportunities giving them, being able to quickly take care of Ting Lu and Chien Pao with either of them really not doing much. Taking the opportunities they're given is certainly a great aspect, and we're able to clean up quite well at the end with the Quaquaval. That was, kind of a big selling point here, able to get a big 3-0 win against, one of those favorited teams, the current back-to-back champ. So a lot of things looking good here.
Absolutely. A couple of months, I think, played very well. Like I said, I think the Quaquaval was played very well at the end game, which seems to be a consistent trend for a lot of these top teams, playing the end game particularly well there, too. The Iron Hands, I thought, also played pretty well there, too. Glamora swapped in appropriately a couple times there. Like I said, prioritizing hazard, so definitely still well-deserved here at 4. Wondering if they can even move up a little bit here in the next couple weeks. They have the opportunity, so we'll see what happens. But that's going to do it for power rankings. That means that we get to look forward to the next week as well, as we get to look at week 2 matches. The Burbs and the Close Combat Club not having a chance to really redeem themselves here this next week, but there are some very fun matches here to look at from both sides. Steve, what stands out to you?
So from my conference here at Paldea, a big one is, of course, the Newport Nocturnals and Quiet Majesty. We're talking about, they are currently our 1 and 2 over in the Paldea conference. this is, another chance for Quiet Majesty to kind of prove themselves, and a win here really solidifies their position as a top team, whereas a big loss could solidify me as a bad team, and them just picking up a meaningless win against me.
I think over in Paldea as well, I'd look at the Boulder's Wobbuffets there too. Boulders have gotten a big win against you in the past, and maybe looking for another one here too, whereas you're trying to get your footing back there too, which I think is definitely a big deal. The other one that catches my eye in Johto for me is Steamrollers and Incineroar. That looks like a very juicy matchup there as well. We also get the 1 and the 2 in our power rankings facing off yet again there too. Steamrollers looking to see if they can do this against another well-quality opponent, Incineroar. Maybe get the chance to use more than one Mon here. Anything else in Johto standing out for you here, Steve?
It'll be good to see some of the teams we haven't seen yet. So, like the Music City Mudkips and the Lairon. We talked about the Lairon picking up the win here and making it in at 4 in the power rankings. Let's see if they can keep that up and pick up another one, as well as our first glance at the Mudkips this season and seeing what they're bringing after a fantastic introductory beginner league season for them last time.
Definitely agree there too. So that's going to be week 1 in the books and week 2 coming up ahead. Thanks again to Steve for joining me, and thanks to all of you for joining us. We'll see you next time on the week 2 power rankings for both Paldea and Johto. See you then.